Hey folks, I'm here today to walk you through how I make a mask out of fabric. I figured the easiest way to do this would be kind of cooking show styles, so you can see here I've got a whole bunch of steps all laid out and I'll hold them up as we get to each step. So I start off here by cutting out my pattern pieces and I lay them down right sides together and then stitch just a 1/4 inch seam allowance here along that curved part. And one way that makes this process a little bit quicker and also saves a lot of thread is by chain piecing. So when I get to the end of one piece, I just feed the next one through and I end up with a long line, kind of like prayer flags at this point. So I'm just going to cut this one apart for you here. So it's super easy, you just cut and you don't have to worry about any dangly ends. So we're here, we've got two pieces. You'll notice one of them is patterned and one of them is solid. That's how I've been doing all of my masks, so that you can tell which side is which and you can have the option of wearing it either way. The next step here is I have pressed a 1/4 inch seam allowance and doubled it over itself, so it's a folded over hem like this. And I've done that on both of my pieces, but this is where I start to distinguish between which is the front and which is the back side of the mask. So we'll call this one the front. For all of these, I folded over the one edge, and then for the other ones, you'll see I've flipped it over so that the curves are facing opposite ways, and I have pressed and hemmed the other side. That's for when we get to stitching them together. Both of those rolled hems are going to be on the same side so that there's an opening there. So we're at this point. The next step, once it is pressed and stitched, or at least just pressed, is I've been cutting off about a 1/4 inch here. And maybe if you'd like to just have two different size pattern pieces, that might make it easier for you. But I've just been doing just like this. I'll cut off that extra 1/4 inch because the side with this rolled hem has a larger seam allowance than the other side that doesn't have a rolled hem, and it's just a minor detail. It works either way. If you don't cut that piece off, it just helps to make them a little bit more symmetrical. So once we've got those two pieces done here, then I start stitching them together. So you can see here, I have started stitching it together. The first thing I always do is I tack on one of the strings. There are going to be 4, of course. So I tack on that one piece. It's in the machine like this. Machine's this way. And so then I tack that on and I continue this stitch all the way along the one side. This one is going to be the bridge of the nose. You can see that curve there. And I'm going to just see if I can put this down. Yeah, you can still see it. So once it's in the machine, I keep the needle in right here at the end, and I lift that presser foot up and then open these two layers, and I will then lay that string down like that, and I'll do the second one as well down at the bottom here. So that second one, the first one gets tucked up right near the seam that you just made, and then this bottom one, I keep it about a 1/4 inch again from the bottom, and it just lines up with the raw edge there, and then fold that back over itself, and I'll continue that stitch all the way around like this. And when I get to the very end again, I'll add on the final strap, and you can see all 4 of them right there. So from here I can flip this mask inside out, or right side out, I guess. And I'm going to pull all of the 4 strings out. I attached them right near the corners, so mostly if I just give a little tug on those strings, I'm able to pop the corner out quite easily. But something else that we have been doing is grabbing just a chopstick like this, and you can get that in the corners like this, just to poke them out nicely so that you can get a nice clean finish for the top stitch. And you can press again here. I haven't been for the most part. I'll just pull these so that it lays nice and flat, and then I get the top stitch going all the way around, starting from the open edge all the way around the top past those 2 straps and down to here again. So I've got one here that I have finished top stitching. I have my machine loaded up with a white thread on the top and a black thread on the bottom because there's a light colored fabric and a dark colored fabric that I'm working with right now. I've only been doing mine in black and white thread for the most part, so just whichever one kind of works the closest. So you can see here the top stitch is all finished, and an additional little detail that I have is I've been adding just a row of stitching here to accommodate a piece of wire that you can put in so that it fits over the bridge of your nose a little bit nicer. So this pocket is open so that you can add another filter, another layer of fabric, blue shop towel, coffee filter, whatever folks have been using, but you can also use it to insert a wire. So I just put it in through there and bring it all the way up to where the stitches are. Something else I've been doing, which I feel like is kind of sewing taboo, is I've been putting both of the seam allowances to the same direction. So you can see here, this is where it's open, and then I'm pressing both of the seam allowances away from that side, and that is hopefully to make it easier to get this wire through, because it can be a little bit fiddly. But now that it's in there, I used a pretty heavy gauge copper wire that we just had around, but I have also just folded a twist tie in half in the past as well and done the exact same thing, so that now that it's in there, you can bend it and it stays closer to your nose. I wear glasses, and I've found that a nice sturdy wire like this is the best for making sure that the mask doesn't fog up my glasses. One other tip that we have on stitching this bridge seam, I'm going to pull you over to my sewing machine here. So I've set up my sewing machine with 2 pieces of masking tape, one on either side of the needle like this, and I've set it up so that it's 25 millimeters or 1 inch from the needle. The tape is about 1 inch on either side of the needle, and that way when I put my mask there to sew it, I start with that middle seam lined up to that tape, and so then I'll line it up so it's all nice, and then when that middle seam gets to that top piece of tape, I know that's as long as I need that line of stitching to be. That's that. That is how we've been making masks. We've done about 200 of them so far, and if you have any other tips for making them quicker or nicer or whatever it is, let me know. More little thing I wanted to share is just how we actually cut out all those pattern pieces. So an easy way that we've found is we cut a piece or rip a piece of fabric that is going to be twice as wide as one mask, and then we fold it over right sides together, and if the fabric needs to be pressed, we'll press it at that point. So we'll iron this nice long strip of fabric, and then we'll get the pattern piece and cut sort of like this. So we'll lay one, and then the next one we cut will be facing the other way and the other way again, so that you can cut as many pieces as possible from the same strip with as little waste as possible. So it ends up kind of looking like this. But of course I'm cutting all of these pieces out as I go along. There you go. I hope that helps.